What's up, guys? I think I tiptoed around Don't Breathe 2, that review, more than any other review I've ever done. There's just so much in the way of spoilers that I didn't want to give you guys. So I got to do a spoiler review. I got to talk about some stuff, okay? So anyway, let's do this. Don't Breathe 2, all the spoilers. What is up, guys? I love doing spoiler reviews because I can just kind of sit back. They're a little bit more freeform than my more structured non-spoiler reviews, I guess you could say. So we're going to talk about all the spoilers for Don't Breathe 2, but I wanted to address one thing at the beginning of this review that's not really, I guess, spoilerish, although it can kind of bleed into spoilers, but it's really about the blind man and how he is portrayed in this movie. Because when I went into this movie, I knew that the blind man, you know, from the first movie was not a good guy at all. And I went into this movie thinking, okay, we're going to follow the next chapter of this guy's journey. Because we do that sometimes, right? I mean, we talk about bad people in movies, and they are the focal point sometimes. Sometimes they do ride the line between good and bad. And in this particular situation, the blind man is in a different set of circumstances than in the previous movie. And in the previous movie, let's call a spade, he pretty much was trying to rape Jane Levy's character. A despicable human being, right? So I went into this movie thinking that they weren't going to put a cape on this guy or anything. But, you know, he does have a set of circumstances, being that he actually has a daughter or daughter figure. Again, this is a spoiler review. She's not technically his daughter. We'll get into that part. My whole thinking while I was watching this movie was I'm rooting for her. I'm not rooting for him. He just happens to be the guy that's going to help her. So after I put out that review, you know, I like to go and watch other reviews of movies and stuff like that. And I did notice that a lot of reviewers were talking about this movie rooting for a despicable human being. And that's the key words here, rooting for. Are we rooting for this guy? And then I saw Jason from Sinister Cinema Reviews. I like to watch his reviews because it's just a more laid-back form of reviewing. There's really no cuts whatsoever. So I just find it calming to listen to his reviews. But in his review, something really just jumped right out at me. He brought up that point that a lot of people, even there's an article that he shared with me that stated, we're rooting for a rapist. I have the article pulled up right here. It is the Daily Beast. I don't know anything about that publication, but Don't Breathe 2 wants you to root for a rapist. That's pretty damn blunt, right? And so I got into a conversation with Jason about this, and he kind of sees it the way I see it. I wasn't rooting for this guy. I was rooting for his daughter. And that kept me safe in this movie. And I think that's the way to approach a movie like this, you know, because there's been movies tons and tons of times where, you know, they literally even say, get ready to root for the bad guy. Payback, Mel Gibson. It happens, right? Now, Mel Gibson wasn't a rapist in that. So when you're dealing with a character that goes this far, that's a rapist, you got to tread lightly. Because you don't want your audience to say, this guy's great. This guy, you know, he's the hero of the movie. Even though he's doing heroic things in this movie. I don't know if you call it heroic. He's saving his family. He's saving his daughter. You or me would probably do the same thing, okay? It doesn't mean we're heroic. Heroic, I think, steps outside of that, and you're actually helping complete strangers. Would the blind man help a complete stranger? Probably not. I'm not saying the blind man is, you know, Richard Ramirez, even though what he did was completely despicable, disgusting, and cannot be forgiven by a lot of people. But this is a guy that was in a situation, he's protecting his family. And Jason actually brought up a really good point. Who's another family that we sort of root for in movies? Look no further than Rob Zombie in House of a Thousand Corpses. Right there. I mean, you kind of feel guilty. Like, why am I rooting for these people to survive? Especially in The Devil's Rejects. It goes even further. And you are literally confronted with that question. Are you supposed to root for these guys? Do you want them to escape the cops? And the cops aren't made to look like the nicest people in the world. They look like Rob Zombie characters. I guess all Rob Zombie characters aren't the nicest people in the world. Like, I could literally have a stream about this. I might even like bring this up in my next DD Live, because it's an interesting topic, and you can bring forth quite a few cases throughout cinema history. And I was so consumed with this topic that I even like posed it to Killer Flicks. I even posed it to my daughter, because she went and saw the movie yesterday, and I asked her what she thought about it. And her opinion was, yeah, I think they're trying to make you root for, I guess, the rapist. She didn't even say that, but she said the only way they could do that is to make the other people on the other side even more despicable. And what they do to his daughter in that movie, like, it's unthinkable that you would literally try to kill your own daughter because you're so hooked on greed and meth addiction and all that stuff. These people are like the worst of the worst of the worst. And I think my daughter had a point there. That's how they got away with it. But even on Killer Flicks, I posted the question here. And, I said there's no wrong answers, but, what do you guys think? And Shane Staley says, yes, if we really want to side with him, we can do that ourselves. Don't need to force it and ruin the movie. Same thing with Rob Zombie does. He brings up Rob Zombie. So Shane thinks they did go that route. Then Winnie Pino, she says, I think some people take fictional characters a little too seriously. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you're watching a piece of fiction. Now, if he was based on an actual man who was convicted of rape and they tried to glorify it, that's an issue. But in this case, if you side with him, cool. If you want him to die, cool. It's a movie. And of course, if you want to avoid the movie because of the touchy subject, you can. Very good point, Winnie. A couple more here I'll read. Josh Krubner says they tried to, but he wasn't, so the whole thing fell really flat for me. But I'm thinking he thought that, they did try to glorify it a little bit, and that's a reason why it fell flat. And then last one, Lacey Lou. She says, no, I don't think so at all. The blind man knew he was a bad person, and he admits it. That's a key point right there. The movie, I think, kind of justified it, because throughout the movie, the blind man was literally stating, hey, I'm not a good person. And at the end of the movie, when he dies, he almost repents, and he says, stay away from me. He's trying to tell his daughter to run away from him. And then he literally dies at the end of the movie. But before he dies, he says, literally, I'm a rapist. I'm a killer. I cannot be justified. Of course, I'm paraphrasing, but, the writers, Fede Alvarez and Rodo, knew exactly what they were doing. They knew that this was going to be a touchy subject, so how do we address it in the writing? And that's what they did. And then to finish her thought, she says, what's interesting is people want to say they are feeling forced to feel for the blind man when you aren't forced to feel anything you don't want to. It's about terrible people, and you don't have to choose to root for anyone. I guess it's who is the lesser of two evils, which is what I just talked about recently with, the girl's real father and the complete dickbags that he was in company with. So anyway, pressing forward with the spoiler review, and through all that, we did address a lot of the spoilers that are in the movie, less structurally, but we're going to press forward with this. Now, we see at the beginning of the movie, and I was always wondering, like, how does he have a daughter, even though at the end of the movie he didn't succeed, he didn't complete the mission. And we find out, there was this house that was set fire, and the daughter ends up on the road, and he saves her and takes her in as his own. And keep in mind, throughout the whole first movie, his goal was he just wanted a family because he lost his family. And so he went through unforgivable means to achieve that goal. But at the end of the day, that's what he wanted. And so if he becomes a father, is he going to be a good father? Probably. I mean, there's worse fathers out there, right? He definitely sheltered her way too much, and that was one part of the movie that she complained about quite a bit. But, he took care of her. He sheltered her. He even went as far as training her, to take care of herself if she's in a situation, which she was in this movie, and luckily she was able to take care of herself. Now, when we're introduced to, the bad guys in this movie, at first, I was thinking they were just going to be stock criminals. I thought they would probably give a little bit, they gave a hint that they were in the military. So I thought maybe it was a tie to his military career that he had. But it went a lot further than that. You find out that this is her father because of, the hair, the strand of gray hair. This is where I sat up in my seat in the theater and I was like, okay, now I'm really into this movie. This is really interesting. And it's cool that like the first half of the movie was kind of what they did in the first movie, with just a cat and mouse type game, and the criminals are in the house, and just a really well directed part of the movie too. You can tell that Rodo and Fetty are kind of cut from the same cloth, because this did feel like a Fetty Alvarez directed movie. I don't know if it's more of a collaborative thing, or if Fetty kind of took him under his wing and said, you might want to do this shot this way instead of this way. I'm not sure. I'll have to do some research and find out. But I was very impressed with the direction that Rodo did in this movie. Definitely looking forward to seeing what he does with future projects, because I believe this was his first movie. But then we're introduced to the mother, and that was a strange scene, because I'm not going to lie, when she's in the shadows and she starts coming forward into the light, I'm thinking, who is this person? Is this Jane Levy's character? Because she did live, and that was kind of a weird way to direct that scene, because usually when you keep somebody in the shadows, it tends to be a big reveal, being that it's a character from a previous movie or something like that. But this was just her mother, So I was like, oh, okay, so I guess that's where they're going with this. But what came next just blew my freaking mind. Like, she literally wanted to take her own daughter's heart, and she's never seen this girl since she was a baby. And now she wants to just take her heart. And that is the power of drug addiction, I guess. And the meth business, because she was like a meth queen. I guess she was kind of like the Walter White, but she didn't look like she was as put together as Walter White was. And this is the part where, the blind man, he has to figure out how to get to his daughter, because this is a different location, second half of the movie. And this is a good segue into the dog. And I briefly mentioned it in my non-spoiler review, but I loved how they handled, the bad guy's dog, the pit bull. And I knew that this was going to happen. It made me think of Lethal Weapon 3, how he made the bad dogs good. He brought them over to his side. I mean, dogs are dogs. They're not bad or good. They're trained that way. And so once the dog gets up, the blind man, he loves dogs so much that within seconds he was able to pull the dog to his side. The kidnappers are complete scumbags, and they're willing to literally kill the dog. And so he has to save this dog. And again, bad guys do good things sometimes, guys. It just happens. They do. Bad guys have their own little qualities and traits, and they might have a trait that you like. The blind man loves dogs, that's just one of his traits. Yeah. He is a despicable human being for what he did in the first movie, but he loves dogs. And we love dogs too, I just did a top 10 good doggos. And it kind of made up for previously in the movie, his dog Shadow was killed. So he saved this dog. And I was wondering if they were going to do a part 3, but then by the end of the movie we find out that's not going to happen. Unless they do kind of a spin-off type movie. But he uses the pit bull, the dog, to get to the other location, because I was like, how in the hell is this guy, he's blind. How in the hell is he going to get there? And they definitely took some liberties with him being blind and being able to achieve what he's able to achieve. But this is a movie. He's pretty much Superman. So, you get what you get, right? He's like Daredevil. Now, let's talk about the violence real quick in this movie. There's 3 particular scenes that I absolutely loved. And one was very unique, actually. Early in the movie, you got this guy who gets in the garage, and the blind man takes super glue and super glues his mouth and nose shut. And I was just like, wow, that's gotta suck. And so then one of his buddies comes in, takes a screwdriver and sticks it in the side of his mouth. I've never seen anything like this in a movie. I was loving it. Carnage Candy, right, people? That was some gnarly shit. But then you got tons of bludgeoning and hammer action throughout the movie. He's beating the crap out of this guy with a hammer and not letting up whatsoever. And then at the end, I love this scene because it kind of ties to his own disability when he takes his thumbs and he pushes it in the guy's eye sockets and he says, "You're going to see what I see." I was waiting for him to do that because I've literally heard stories of that stuff happening. Like, I've heard stories of Vietnam vets who are not there in the head when they get back to the States. And, somebody confronting them and the things that these people have seen. I literally heard a story. One of these old timers told me that one of his buddies literally did that. He stuck his thumbs in this guy's eye sockets and he said, "This is the last thing you're ever going to see." And it's a horrible thing. It was just a bar fight, but wow. So that scene made me think of that story. I've heard some pretty fucked up stories, by the way. But anyway, that's my spoiler review. This movie has definitely stayed with me. I really liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to. It was highly entertaining. well-paced, great performances. I absolutely adored Madeline Grace as Phoenix, his daughter. That actress has a bright future ahead of her, for sure. She kind of carried this movie, along with the blind man, of course. And again, she is the one that you're rooting for. And if you didn't have her in the movie, then I think it would have hurt the movie quite a bit and we wouldn't care as much. But because she's in the movie, I think it makes it work. You know, I think it works very well. So definitely sticking with a purchase worthy. I'm going to buy this one for sure when it comes out. And it makes it for a nice double feature. You know, Don't Breathe and Don't Breathe 2. Don't think there's going to be a third one. So anyway, let me know your thoughts on Don't Breathe 2 in the comments. Looking forward to hearing them. Let me know if you rooted for the guy or if you felt bad for rooting for the guy, you know? Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day, and on Fridays we do Free Fall Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums on all my socials. Support me on Patreon. Buy me a coffee. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and Drumdum out.